What's up guys, welcome to this video on Elvis is the Man. So in this video I'd like to discuss 3 reasons I see why Elvis never did an overseas tour. Why didn't the greatest performer of all time do any type of touring overseas? From 1954 till 1977, nearly 99% of Elvis's shows were in the United States, with the exception of a couple shows in Canada in 1957. In this video, I will discuss 3 possible reasons why this was, and I look forward to seeing your comments in the comment section of this video to see if there's anything you'd like to add or anything you agree or disagree with. I look forward to seeing them in the comments. In 1973, Elvis did the famous Aloha from Hawaii satellite concert, which reached 1.5 billion people overall. The live broadcast was January 14th and went out to many countries. It was not seen in the United States until April of that year. The album from the show went number 1. It was a success in every area. This concert was done in an effort to reach as many fans as possible and to please his overseas audience. If you were an overseas fan at that time, the only way you could see Elvis was through the movies, which were now over, or the 2 documentaries in 1970 and 1972, which were That's the Way It Is and Elvis on Tour. So why would Elvis not just tour overseas? Why did he decide to do this satellite concert in the first place? Why wouldn't Elvis just demand to go overseas and say, forget this concert idea? This brings me to my first hypothesis as to why Elvis was denied an overseas tour, because he did say in many instances, in interviews and such, that he wanted to tour overseas. The issue of Colonel Parker not being a legal citizen of the United States is the biggest reason that I see. Colonel Parker immigrated illegally to the United States when he was 20 years old. He remained in this country for the rest of his life and never attained legal status. Colonel Parker never left this country's borders once he came here. When he did come here at 20 years old, he later changed his name and claimed to be a United States citizen. He didn't tell anybody about his Dutch background. Now, Parker's real name, and this is hard to pronounce, was Andreas Cornelis van, it's K-U-I-J-K. I'll type it out here. That was his real name, and he was born in the Netherlands in 1909. When he was 18, he came into the United States illegally by jumping off his employer's ship because he was working for a boat company at the time, and then came on a ship illegally to the United States. He then went back briefly to the Netherlands before coming back to the United States and working in carnivals. He enlisted in the Army soon after and took the name Tom Parker from the officer who interviewed him. Parker served 2 years in Hawaii, then re-enlisted in Florida, but later went AWOL and was charged with desertion. He was punished with solitary confinement. He then emerged with a psychosis that led him to spending 2 months in a medical hospital, and he was discharged from the Army because of his medical condition. Now, Elvis didn't know about this, neither did anyone else in his group. With Parker being Elvis's manager, Parker could have feared getting caught if he traveled overseas in one of Elvis's tours with him. Now, some people have said that Parker could have gotten around this by having maybe Tom Diskin or somebody else cover for him overseas, and he would stay put in the United States like Parker did when Elvis was in the Army. But maybe Parker was just too afraid to risk it at that point, 1973, maybe 71, 72. That could have been the reason why Parker discouraged overseas touring, because he said that they wouldn't be able to handle security or other issues, which only seemed like an excuse. Because all the other acts of 1970 and on in the 70s, who were a little more successful than Elvis, let's be honest, at that time, were having great success overseas with tours like the Rolling Stones or the Beatles in the 60s or Led Zeppelin. So this brings you to the question that I think you got to ask yourself. Why didn't Elvis demand an overseas tour? Elvis didn't know that Parker was hiding his illegal status, and which could have been one of the reasons why Elvis was being discouraged from going overseas. So why didn't Elvis just put his foot down and say, no, I want an overseas tour. Enough with these bogus reasons. Let's do it. Was Elvis just too weak-willed to demand what he wanted? Or did he not want it bad enough? We see how Elvis changed the concept of his 1968 comeback special. It went from a Christmas show to basically, let's try to save my career show, and it worked. So that could have built up his confidence a little bit. And we also know that in January, February of the next year in 1969, for those sessions, Elvis demanded to sing the songs that he wanted to sing, most notably Suspicious Minds. When Parker was trying to put the squeeze on Chip's Moman about publishing, Elvis went ahead and recorded it anyway. And it was his last number one hit, if you don't count, Burning Love with Cashbox. Or maybe Elvis just thought he had plenty of time and didn't need to rock the boat this early. What do you guys think? Now, for the last 2 points of this video that I'll make, and, this holds a little less weight than the first opinion I put with Parker. The second and third reasons why people say, and, I see it could be true maybe in a sense, is the second one being, Elvis couldn't tour overseas because he knew that, he would have to bring so many pills and, quote, medication with him overseas that he wouldn't be allowed to go overseas. Maybe there could be some type of, big international, commotion about this in the press, and that would not look good for his image. He couldn't really conceal that many pills. But me personally, I think that, Elvis was Elvis, and he could even meet with, President Nixon at the drop of a hat. So why couldn't he, have something like this go overseas? Maybe he could get in touch with doctors that were over there to help him, or conceal it in some way, or just have an excuse. Dr. Nick could say something, and I don't think that really could have stopped Elvis, in my opinion. I think that's one of the weaker arguments. The second one being that, Elvis didn't go anywhere without his guns, and that was one of the things that Parker said. We couldn't guarantee, you'd be secure over there, which was bogus for the first reason I made about the other acts like the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin and so many others touring overseas, and they had protection. But, Elvis, loved his guns and wanted to bring that over, and they were saying no, they would confiscate his guns and he wouldn't be able to. And I think that's probably the weakest argument that I've heard. But going back to my second point, maybe it's somewhat true in the sense that Elvis knew that he relied so much on the medication to help him that he just thought maybe he couldn't undertake a world tour. Like you saw what happened with Michael Jackson for the This Is It tour. Reports say that, there's some possibilities he could have been murdered, but, maybe the stress of it all got to Michael Jackson, and that could have led to that happening. Maybe Elvis thought of by 72, 73, when he was really itching to do a tour, possibly, that he's I don't know if I would be able to make it at this point, the pills and all the things that Elvis had to rely on, which was another reason why Elvis maybe didn't do A Star Is Born, because he knew the commitment it would take him. He'd have to lose weight, get off the pills, and stay straight for so long that, he just told Parker to put up a price tag so high that Barbra Streisand wouldn't bite on it. And that could be a reason for not touring overseas. So these are my 3 reasons that I think maybe are the most credible. But ultimately, the decision came down to Elvis. We could say Parker wouldn't, and what about the, this or that, the second and third reasons. I think if Elvis wanted to, he could have done it. And why didn't Elvis really want to? Because it ultimately fell on Elvis's lap. He could have just ditched Parker, got another manager, and set things up from there. So I ultimately think it's Elvis's fault, obviously. But these are the 3, issues that I see people bring up. And I think the first one here was probably the most valid, but ultimately it comes down to Elvis. Maybe by, the 73, 74, 75, he just thought it would be too much of a commitment, and things are too hectic for me, and it's really easy to stay in my routine of these American cities, these easy tours, other than, Pontiac Silverdome 75. It's just easy to stay in my routine, my comfort zone. Because, 69, 70, 71, I think Elvis was like, yeah, let's do it. Parker kind of puts him off. Okay, well, maybe next year. And all right, yeah, maybe by 73, we ought to do like a little satellite concert thing just, to give something to overseas fans, and then they'll do one later. But maybe it's like when it got into the later 70s, he's like, geez, boys, I'd rather not do it right now. So there's that for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found some of these points I made to be, entertaining, enlightening, and cause some questions to come into your mind about this. I'm interested to see in the comments what you guys have to say, because I always like hearing what you guys have to say in the comments. I learn a lot, and also you guys make me think of things that maybe I wouldn't have. So I look forward to seeing that in the comments. Check out ElvisistheMan on Instagram and Facebook for daily posts and little videos, and check out my Bible and fitness page in the links below, and we'll talk to you next time.